How's your Friday been so far?
It's been full, but that's a good problem to have. I like
Yeah.
your cat. My cat has been pacing in front of me this whole time, but he's finally sat down on his little sidecar seat over here.
Oh, cute. Yeah, I know. I want her to not, I want her to figure out her life right now so that I can figure out our podcast recording. But yeah, this is Bella.
Hi,
Bella.
Bella.
Of course, you decided to come join me for the podcast.
My cat, Zeus, he's a little black cat, so he often disappears with the background. So
Oh,
sometimes it looks like I've just lost my mind and I'm like heading the air, or
fair.
although
Yeah.
yeah, just all of a sudden a tail will walk in front of me and people can't see the rest of him. So that's always entertaining.
That's so fun. We love that. So just to kind of frame today's call, we'll have around I would say 25-minute conversation around your business, your why, how you got started, industry trends that you're seeing, challenges you faced along the way, and where the future, where you hope to be in the next couple years with Make Believe. And then we will wrap up with any sort of next steps if that makes sense. I kind of had described or mentioned that I do offer AI marketing, so we would hop on a separate call and talk marketing and strategy and numbers, if that makes sense, and if it's aligned. Anyways, so before we dive in, any questions?
Not really. I mean, yeah,
Ready to go?
happy to
All
chat.
right. Perfect. Sounds great. Just making sure it is indeed recording, which it is. What's it called? Let me just make sure that all of my notifications are silenced. All right, Ben, thanks so much for joining me here today on the Ripple Effect with Ray. Excited to dive into you, your company, Make Believe Works. Thanks for being here.
I'm thrilled. I'm really looking forward to it.
All right, Ben, so tell me your why and how did you figure out, this name? Tell me about the name and your why.
So the why is it sort of grew out of my personal story. I spent many years working in financial marketing in corporate America, because that's how I could pay my rent. But I've always been a bit of a sort of creative platypus, like made up of all sorts of parts that don't usually fit together. So psychology and marketing, but also philosophy and film and physics and art and all these sort of different passions of mine. But there's not really a straight career path for a duck-billed personality like that. At least that's what I thought until I discovered this design firm called IDEO that when I went there from the corporate world, it was like going from Kansas into Oz. It was just an amazing technicolor experience of going from a place, most places get their people to thrive using either fear or incentives. And going to IDEO, this was a place that was doing world-class work fueled on trust and creativity and vulnerability, where it wasn't about making yourself look good, it was about making others successful. And I was just really both thrown by the level of work that could come out of a place that wasn't made up of people pacing around making sure you were doing your job, and just utterly fell in love with it. I remember my first week there, I was asked to prepare a presentation for a major client. So I did what one does, and I asked for, past materials and what's the brand voice and all of this sort of stuff, so I could write in the IDEO's voice. And the woman that had hired me sort of looked at me and said, "Your voice is IDEO's voice. That's why we hired you." And so they didn't want me to blend in; they wanted me to help them grow. And it really rewired my sense of what was possible at work. And so the name of our business comes out of, they had an ongoing sort of community practice called Make Time, where people would share skills and do things, and it was sort of sporadic. But I took it over, turned it into Make Believe Time, and used it as an opportunity to sort of play with. I turned it into basically a creative play date that we did that was meant to do two main things. It was meant to sort of refill our own energetic, inspirational, creative wells by doing all these sort of fun and silly activities, but also it was a way to practice and build that emotional muscle memory that it took to be trusting, to be vulnerable, to assume good, all of that stuff that, doesn't necessarily come naturally to everybody. Those workshops became really popular. We finally spun them off into their ongoing concern. They became Make Believe Works, our team building company. And then the premise behind it became a book that I've just put out called Safe Danger.
Wow, tell me about this book.
Well, Safe Danger is sort of the heart of, after doing these workshops for a while and looking to see what resonated most with people, I sort of hit on this balance. The idea is that Safe Danger is the emotional space where people feel safe enough to leave safety behind, but still challenged enough to grow. It's a way of getting people to try something that they had not expected to try, discover that it's safe, and keep expanding their sense of self. We use it in our workshops as a way to get people to, cut through their expectations and assumptions and start to see each other more clearly. The whole premise of our team building activities are not just that they're fun, but that they're a way to accelerate and build meaningful connection between people. And we do that by having them take some risks, and but do it in a way that those risks don't feel threatening and dangerous, but challenging and exciting.
Absolutely. And I love that. And I think you touched on a few different interesting points there, right? Because I think we have this idea of team building in the corporate space. And I see you're laughing about it, right? Like
Absolutely.
we both have corporate backgrounds and we probably remember a time when somebody was like, Okay, we're gonna have somebody come in and do some team building." You're like, "No,
Oh, it's the worst.
it's the worst. I don't want to do that. Like, give
Yeah,
me the money instead."
exactly. Either let me do the work that you want me to do, or give me the money and let me go home to my family. And
Exactly.
yeah, I
Exactly.
I'm a deep, deep introvert. So any sort of, I would rather have gnawed off a limb and run for the hills than ever do a role-playing skit ever again. It's just the worst. And so a lot of what we designed was, I designed it with cynics and introverts and people that didn't want to be there in mind. How do we make this accessible to everybody? How do we make everybody, all different types of personalities, feel like this is worth their time? Because if you're going to take people away from their work, it's got to be worth their time. They've got to leave thinking, you know, that was valuable and not, ugh, I wish I'd bailed. No one would have noticed.
Yes, exactly. And so what would you say, I don't know if you have a secret sauce, but or like I guess what would you say has been an industry trend, I guess, that you've noticed in the industry in your field?
In my field, well, I mean, team building itself, sort of, there are three main modes of it that we've seen that we actually try very hard to avoid. First is competition. Lots of activities and things lean into competition, everything from scavenger hunts to balloon towers. The idea is it's a really easy way to get people excited and their pulse up and they shout, and that's great for what it is. But if you're trying to build authentic connection between people, competition inherently divides people. It pits them against each other. Most people try to show off and brag, and most people lose. So it's not a great mindset to be in if what you're hoping to do is have people drop their guard and share who they really are. So instead of competition, we choose to lean into creativity and conversation. Creativity to help people lower their guard and think of this as play instead of therapy. But conversation is a way to get to the stories that really define who they are and matter. Another thing we see in that a lot of activities lean on is sort of passive dynamics. Fun stuff like paint and sips or cooking classes that are well intentioned, but essentially they don't ask anything of the audience. The audience just does what it's told. They don't add anything of themselves. So people walk away thinking, well, if I hadn't shown up, no one would have noticed. And that's not great. So what we found is a much more satisfying experience for people is when they get to both teach and learn, when they both give and receive, when there's a sense that their presence was valued and their insights were appreciated. And then the third thing we see a lot of, again, really fun stuff, cocktail parties or happy hours and escape rooms, but basically where the dynamic is just where the loud people get loud and the quiet people get quiet and the friends cluster together and everybody goes home as quickly as they can. But nobody learns anything new. And so, what we've seen is just it's so important that people learn something new about everybody else that's around them, the dynamics between them, hopefully themselves, so that the value of the activity doesn't end with the activity. It's sort of just getting started. But
Mm.
that's become our approach to team building, where it really does seem to do something more than just fill the calendar, but it actually does build the team instead of just some fun.
Right. I think you brought up so many relatable points, I think, that we've all probably experienced in one setting or another, myself included. I was, in my past life, I was a tech recruiter, and so I'm very familiar with the happy hours and the random competitive things, and it's nice and refreshing to hear that you're kind of shaking things up, like offering something different and, actually doing something that like harnesses connection and collaboration rather than the opposite. What would you say has been a challenge for you? What's been frustrating? What's been working well?
Well, I mean, the biggest challenge is that we exist under this heading of team building, and everybody knows what team building is. It's scavenger hunts and trivia nights, and their expectations are really skewed against what we want to do. But that comes with the territory. I would say the biggest challenge just overall are leaders that don't value the human side of their people, that their main concern is making sure people live up to their resumes rather than being concerned about the person that put the resume together. And one of the things I took away from IDEO was, and the difference from many places is, most places the focus is profit, profit, profit.
Mhm.
And IDEO was really about people, 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 with the expectation that if you really set up circumstances where people can be their full selves, bring the full spectrum of what they have to offer to the table, that the quality of the work and the profit will follow
Mhm.
because you're allowed to really speak what's on your mind. There's these places so often corporate America will they want to get the most out of their people, but they think they do that by telling them what to do as opposed to listening to who they are.
Yep.
And what we saw at IDEO was that when you allow people to feel comfortable being themselves, when they feel safe, when they have that psychological safety to share a half-baked idea with the confidence that someone will take it and make it better instead of laugh at them or judge them, that the ideas, that they flourish and you find surprise, find new things and things that you never would have gotten to. But that takes work and it takes thought. And it's not the most direct path. We often hear from people that, well, we're on tight deadlines and we have a limited budget. We just don't have time for
Mm.
nice fluff like team building. And just what I've seen is that team building is not the icing on the cake. It's not the fluff. It's what makes good work possible.
Mm.
And I'm a humanities major, so I'm not into data and stats in general, but the data and stats support that. There's been study after study after study from MIT and Google and University of Warwick and all these places looking into what makes the most successful teams so successful, the ones that are the most productive, the ones that make the fewest mistakes, that have the biggest impact on their offices, their workplaces, and their industry as a whole. And what they found was that it wasn't the stuff that people usually
Thought of.
focus on. It
Hmm.
wasn't about hard skills. It wasn't about education or experience. It wasn't about personality types and being ambitious or cutthroat. The thread that ran through it all was psychological safety, the softest of the soft skills. And prioritizing that is really counterintuitive to a lot of the scarcity mentality that permeates most businesses. Um,
Absolutely. Well,
so
I
yeah,
think,
it's been a big shift.
yeah, thank you for bringing that up and for sharing that. Because I think so much of what we see right now with, budget cuts and, layoffs. And a lot of times I think employees feel like they are on the chopping block. Right. And so that constant feeling of anxiety or that they're just a number or whatever, it's like that's a huge that's psychological warfare if you want, if you ask me, right? So having, having somebody like you come in and like create a team of connection and understanding and that like, letting the employees know that they matter, I think is so, so important. And hopefully more and more people can see that. Where would you say you hope to be or where you hope Make Believe Works hopes to be in the next couple years?
Well, one of the sort of unexpected things that has come out of this is as we've grown and we've brought in new facilitators, is the reaction of our facilitators that they suddenly say, things like, this is really satisfying and really this is giving me a new sense of purpose. And this is which reflects, this brings me back to your question about my why in the first place, which is this does feel like it's purposeful work that is engaging all parts of me. And as people are seeing that, we're really enjoying that this has this sort of double edge thing of both helping the teams and the facilitators. So I think as we grow, we're looking into sort of building a stronger network of facilitators and sort of a teaching the teachers approach so that the things that we've learned can become things that we teach them to teach to others as opposed to just putting into practice. But right now, we're just enjoying the breadth of people that are coming to us. When we first started, we really thought our offer was going to be limited to like design firms and self-selecting groups that were willing to play. And what we've found is that people are hungry to connect, whether they're lawyers or accountants or creatives or whatever, that there is a deep loneliness that some people are willing to acknowledge and others aren't, but is there. And it's just very satisfying and exciting to see, to give people the opportunity to experience what I saw at IDEO, which is this idea that things can be different, that there can be purpose in the work, that there can be joy, that you can be trusting, all these things. And it just changes the entire tone of a life if you enjoy going to work with the people that you get to work with.
100%, right? How much of our days, of our time do we spend working?
Yeah.
Right. It is a large majority, right? It's work, and then, home life, family life, sleep is essentially what our days consist of. So we want to enjoy what we do and enjoy the people that we work with. We don't want it to feel like some soul-sucking job, right? And so I think what you're doing, Ben, is very inspiring and so, so needed. Where can people find you or your facilitators?
The easiest place to go is our website, makebelieveworks.com. Or if you'd like our book, you can get that anywhere. It's called Safe Danger. I'm a big fan of local bookstores, but it's also available through Amazon if expediency is your priority. But yeah, it's everywhere.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Ben. Thanks for joining me on the Ripple Effect with Ray.
Yeah.
And excited to see what our audience has to say about today's episode.
No, thanks for having me. It's been a joy.